I'm Azalea Monroe, 32, and I never thought my mother would choose my sister over me. 2 weeks ago, I was effectively homeless after paying my mom's mortgage for 5 years. My sister Bella convinced her I was taking advantage of living there while she moved in rent-free. Yesterday, I received the call that changed everything. Mom and Bella can't make the payments. The bank is threatening foreclosure, and somehow this is suddenly my problem to fix. Before I dive into this wild family drama, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, and hit that subscribe button if you enjoy real-life family revenge stories. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma comes full circle in this one. And if you've ever dealt with family betrayal, that like button is your way of saying, I've been there too. Now, let's get into how my entire world collapsed. Growing up in our modest 2-story home in Greenville, South Carolina, I never imagined I'd one day own it, much less use it as leverage against my own family. Our childhood was comfortable but not lavish. Dad worked as an electrical engineer while Mom managed a small clothing boutique downtown. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough, and most importantly, we had each other. At least, that's what I thought. Bella, my younger sister by 4 years, was always Mom's favorite. It wasn't something explicitly stated, but the evidence accumulated over the years, like sediment forming a rock solid and undeniable. When Bella wanted dance lessons, Mom found the money. When I needed a graphing calculator for advanced placement calculus, I was told to save up from my part-time job. When Bella wrecked Dad's car at 16, there were tears and understanding. When I came home 15 minutes past curfew, I was grounded for 2 weeks. Still, I loved my family fiercely. Dad was my biggest supporter, always telling me I had a practical mind that would take me places. He encouraged my interest in finance and business, spending hours helping me understand compound interest, while Mom and Bella shopped for the perfect homecoming dress. Dad and I had a bond that felt unbreakable until cancer took him, when I was 24 and Bella was 20. His death devastated our family, but in different ways. I channeled my grief into determination, finishing my MBA while working full-time. Bella dropped out of college, claiming she couldn't focus on studies while mourning. Mom fell into a depression that made holding down her job impossible. That's when everything changed. With Dad gone, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Mom leaned heavily on Bella for emotional support, while I became the practical support, the one who made sure bills were paid and the house didn't fall apart. 3 months after Dad's funeral, when Mom received the foreclosure notice, I stepped up. "Mom, I can help," I said during a tense dinner where Mom had barely touched her food. "I've been saving and I just got promoted. I can cover the mortgage until you're back on your feet." Mom looked relieved, but uncomfortable. "That's very kind, Azalea, but this is my responsibility." "Your father wouldn't want, Dad would want us to stick together," I interrupted. "Let me do this. I'm living here anyway, so it makes sense." What began as a temporary arrangement stretched into months, then years. I paid the $1,800 monthly mortgage, plus utilities and groceries, while Mom occasionally picked up part-time work but never anything substantial enough to contribute meaningfully. Bella bounced between retail jobs and finding herself occasionally sending Mom a couple $100s, but mostly spending her money on weekend trips with friends and an ever-expanding wardrobe. Meanwhile, I put my own life on hold. The down payment I'd been saving for my own place slowly dwindled as unexpected house repairs came up, a new water heater, roof repairs after a storm, plumbing issues that couldn't wait. Dating became complicated when I couldn't reciprocate invitations to my place without explaining my living situation, which inevitably led to the awkward "I live with my mom, but I'm not a loser, I promise" conversation. 5 years passed this way. 5 years of me carrying the financial burden while watching my sister live carefree. 5 years of mom thanking me, but still somehow making me feel like I wasn't doing enough, wasn't being supportive enough. 5 years of me silently building resentment while telling myself I was doing the right thing. Then came Bella's announcement at Sunday dinner 3 months ago. "I've been thinking," she said, twirling pasta around her fork, "that I should move back home for a while." I froze mid-bite. "What?" "Why, well, my lease is ending and rent is crazy expensive right now. Plus, Mom could use the company." She smiled at Mom, who beamed back. "That would be wonderful, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching across to squeeze Bella's hand. "Your old room is basically as you left it." The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister, who had contributed next to nothing for years, was being welcomed with open arms, while I, the one keeping a roof over their heads, was treated like a tenant rather than family. "Mom," I said carefully, "if Bella moves in, she should contribute to the household expenses. I've been covering everything for 5 years now." Mom's expression hardened. "Azalea, your sister is going through a transition period. She needs support, not financial pressure." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I've put my entire life on hold to keep this house. I haven't been able to save for my own place because every spare dollar goes here." "Nobody asked you to do that," Bella said with a dismissive wave. "You chose to stay. Besides, you've been getting free room and board for years." I nearly choked. "Free? I pay the mortgage, the utilities, buy the groceries. How is that free?" "Girls, please," Mom interjected. "Bella, your sister has been very generous. An Azalea family helps family. This isn't about keeping score." But it was about keeping score, at least for me. 5 years of financial sacrifice with minimal recognition had created a ledger of resentment I couldn't ignore any longer. The situation deteriorated quickly after Bella moved in. Suddenly, my contributions were scrutinized while Bella's mere presence was celebrated. When I worked late, I was not spending enough time with family. When Bella spent all day watching reality TV, she was keeping Mom company during a difficult time. When I questioned a $400 electric bill, double our usual amount, I was being petty about money. When Bella ordered expensive takeout 3 times a week, she was treating Mom to special meals. The breaking point came when I overheard a conversation between Mom and Bella that I wasn't meant to hear. I had come home early from work with a migraine and was lying down in my room when their voices drifted up from the kitchen below. "I'm worried about Azalea," Bella was saying. "Don't you think it's unhealthy that she's still living at home at her age? She uses paying the mortgage as an excuse, but I think she's just afraid to start her own life." "I know," Mom sighed. "I feel guilty sometimes, like I've enabled her dependence. Maybe it would be better for her if she had to stand on her own 2 feet." I lay there, tears streaming silently down my face, as the 2 people I'd sacrificed everything for discussed me as if I were a burden rather than their financial savior. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop coffee untouched beside me as I reviewed my financial records from the past 5 years. The numbers were staggering. I had paid $108 0 mortgage payments alone, not counting the utilities, groceries, and home repairs that had drained my savings, all while being painted as the dependent one, the one afraid to launch. I was still staring at my spreadsheet when Mom came downstairs, wrapped in the plush robe I had given her for Christmas. "Good morning, honey," she said, heading straight for the coffee maker. "You're up early." "Did you know," I said without looking up, "that I've paid over $100,000 toward this house, a house that isn't in my name, a house where I'm apparently overstaying my welcome." Mom froze coffee mug halfway to her lips. "What are you talking about? I heard you and Bella last night. About how I'm using the mortgage as an excuse to stay here. About how I need to stand on my own 2 feet." Mom set her mug down slowly. "You weren't meant to hear that, clearly." But is that how you really see me? As some failure who won't leave the nest after everything I've done to keep this roof over our heads? She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Azalea, it's complicated. Yes, you've helped enormously with the finances, and I'm grateful. But sometimes I worry that this arrangement isn't healthy for you. You should be building your own life, not supporting your mother and sister. That's rich coming from someone who hasn't made a mortgage payment in 5 years. And now Bella's back contributing nothing, and suddenly I'm the problem. It's not about contribution, Mom said defensively. Bella provides emotional support. She's there for me in ways you aren't. The words hit like a physical blow. Because I'm working 60-hour weeks to pay for everything, there's more to family than money, Azalea. Before I could respond, Bella appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, despite it being nearly 10 a.m. on a weekday. What's going on? Your sister overheard our conversation last night, Mom explained. Bella had the decency to look momentarily embarrassed before her expression hardened. Well, maybe it's good that it's all out in the open now. Yes, let's get it all out in the open, I said, turning my laptop so they could both see my spreadsheet. Here's a complete accounting of everything I've paid for in this house over the past 5 years. While you, I pointed at Bella, were off finding yourself and posting Instagram photos from Cancun. That's not fair, Bella protested. I've had my own struggles. Not everyone can be Miss Perfect with a fancy job, and the fancy job I used to support this family. That fancy job. Mom slammed her hand on the counter. Enough. This isn't productive. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. You're right, so let's be productive. If I'm such a burden and Bella's moving back in, then let's talk about how she's going to contribute. I told you I can't afford much right now, Bella said, crossing her arms. But I'll help out once I'm settled. And when will that be? Because you've had a decade to settle since Dad died, and somehow you're still needing support rather than giving it, Azalea Mom exclaimed. That's cruel. No, what's cruel is treating the person who's kept you from homelessness like they're an unwelcome guest. The argument escalated from there, days of tension erupting into hours of accusations and tearful recriminations. Bella accused me of holding my financial contributions over their heads. Mom claimed I was distant and cold, focused on money rather than emotional connection. I pointed out the double standards that had defined our family dynamic for years. By the end of it, we were all exhausted and no closer to resolution. I retreated to my room where I spent the night researching apartments and calculating how much I could afford if I wasn't paying someone else's mortgage. The following week was tense, with conversations limited to necessary household logistics. I toured several apartments, finding a modern one-bedroom within walking distance of my office. It was smaller than I'd hoped, but it would be mine, a space where I wasn't constantly made to feel like an intruder. When I announced my plan to move out at the end of the month, I expected relief, perhaps even gratitude for the years I'd supported them. Instead, panic ensued. But what about the mortgage? Mom asked, her face pale. Bella and I can't afford it on our own. That sounds like a problem for you and your emotionally supportive daughter to solve, I replied, the bitterness I'd been suppressing finally finding its voice. I've done my part for 5 years. It's someone else's turn. You can't just abandon us, Bella protested. This is family. You have responsibilities. Funny how I only have responsibilities when it involves my checkbook. Otherwise, I'm the dependent one who needs to move out and grow up. Well, I'm doing exactly that. Mom tried a different approach. Azalea, please. We can work something out. Maybe you could still help with part of the mortgage until Bella finds better employment. I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. So I should pay for a house I don't live in while Bella lives here rent-free? Absolutely not. You're being selfish, Bella snapped. Mom could lose the house. Mom could lose the house because neither of you bothered to plan for this very predictable outcome. I told you both for years that I wouldn't support everyone forever. You chose not to listen or prepare. The argument ended with slammed doors and tears, but my decision was made. I signed a lease on the apartment and began packing my belongings. With each box I filled, I felt a strange mixture of liberation and sadness. Freedom from the thankless burden I'd been carrying, but grief for the family relationships that had deteriorated beyond recognition. 2 days before my planned move, Mom delivered her final blow. She knocked on my bedroom door as I was wrapping picture frames in newspaper. "Azalea," she said, her voice unnaturally calm. "I've been thinking about what's best for everyone." I continued wrapping, not looking up. "And I think it would be better if you moved out sooner rather than later. The tension in this house isn't good for anyone, especially me. My blood pressure has been through the roof." I finally met her gaze. "I'm already leaving in 2 days." "I know, but..." She hesitated. "Bella's friend needs a place immediately, and she's willing to pay some rent. It would help us with the mortgage situation." The implication was clear. They wanted me gone immediately to make room for a paying tenant. After 5 years of carrying them financially, I was being rushed out for someone who would contribute a fraction of what I had. "Fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I'll be gone by tomorrow." That night, I barely slept. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. 5 years of financial support, of putting my own dreams on hold, and this was my reward, being hurriedly evicted to make way for Bella's friend. Each time I closed my eyes, I heard Mom's voice. "It would be better if you moved out sooner." As if I were a problematic tenant rather than a daughter who had sacrificed everything. By morning, my sadness had hardened into resolve. I called my new landlord and explained the situation, offering an additional deposit if I could move in immediately, rather than waiting until the first of the month. Fortunately, the apartment was vacant, and the landlord was sympathetic to my predicament. "The place could use a deep clean, but if you don't mind that, you can start moving in today," he said. I thanked him profusely and began loading my car with essentials, clothes, toiletries, important documents. I would come back for furniture and larger items once I had help. As I was carrying a box downstairs, I ran into Bella in the hallway. She was still in her pajamas at 11 a.m., scrolling through her phone. "You're really leaving today?" she asked, looking up briefly. "That's what Mom wants," I replied coldly. "Don't be so dramatic." She just thought it would be easier for everyone. I set the box down with deliberate care, fighting the urge to drop it dramatically. Easier for whom exactly? For you two, who will now have to figure out how to pay a mortgage you've ignored for 5 years. Or for Cassidy, who gets to move in at a fraction of the actual cost because I've been subsidizing this. Household Bella rolled her eyes. "God, it's always about money with you." "No, it's about respect, something neither of you has shown me." I pushed past her and continued loading my car. Mom emerged from the kitchen as I was making my 3rd trip. "You don't have to rush, Azalea," she said, watching me struggle with a heavy box. "I didn't mean you had to be out this very minute." "Didn't you, though? You made it pretty clear I'm no longer welcome here." "That's not fair. This is still your home." I laughed bitterly. "Is it because it feels like I've been nothing but a walking ATM for years? And now that Bella's friend Cassidy is willing to pay something probably less than half of what I've been contributing, I'm suddenly disposable." Mom's face flushed. "That's not how it is. You're twisting everything." "Am I? Tell me, Mom. How much is Cassidy going to pay in rent?" She hesitated. "We agreed on $600 a month, which is very generous considering what that I've been paying $1. $800 plus utilities and groceries. That's not even enough to cover half the mortgage. She doesn't have your financial resources. And she'll be helping around the house in other ways." "Right. Like Bella helps with her invaluable emotional support." I made air quotes with my fingers, unable to keep the sarcasm from my voice. Mom's expression hardened. I don't appreciate your tone. After everything I've done for you, everything you've done for me, like what Mom like raising me, that's what parents are supposed to do. It doesn't entitle you to a lifetime of financial support. I never asked for your money. No, you just took it. For 5 years, without once considering that maybe I had dreams of my own that were being delayed because every spare dollar went to keeping you in this house. We stared at each other, decades of unspoken tensions hovering between us. Finally, Mom sighed. I think we both need some space. This isn't healthy. On that, at least we agree. I continued moving my essentials throughout the day, ignoring the tension that filled the house like a noxious gas. Bella disappeared around noon, conveniently avoiding any heavy lifting or difficult conversations. Mom stayed in the kitchen occasionally, offering hesitant assistance that I politely but firmly declined. By evening, I had moved enough to stay comfortably in my new apartment. I would need to return for furniture and the rest of my belongings, but the essential break had been made. As I prepared to leave, perhaps for the last time, as someone who considered this house home, I found Mom waiting by the front door. So, this is it, she asked, her voice small. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Me out Cassidy and problem solved. I never wanted to lose my daughter. You didn't lose me, Mom. You chose Bella. You've always chosen Bella. She shook her head. That's not true, isn't it? When have you ever taken my side over hers? When have you ever prioritized my needs? Even now, when I'm the one who's kept this roof over your head, you're pushing me out for her friend. Azalea, please. Can't we discuss this like adults? Figure out some arrangement that works for everyone? I took a deep breath. I'm done discussing. I'm done arranging. I'm done being the responsible one who gets nothing but criticism in return. It's someone else's turn to figure things out. As I turned to leave, Mom grabbed my arm. But what about the mortgage? You know, we can't manage it without you. And there it was, the real concern laid bare. Not that she was losing her daughter, but that she was losing her financial support. You have options, Mom. Sell the house and downsize. Get a roommate who pays fair market rent. Take out a home equity loan. Or hey, here's a radical idea. Get a full-time job. I've given you 5 years to figure out a sustainable plan. That's more than generous. How can you be so cold? This was your father's house. Don't you care what happens to it? It was a low blow using Dad's memory against me. Dad would be ashamed of how you've treated me. He valued fairness and hard work. This situation has involved neither. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I'll be back this weekend with help to get the rest of my things. Please make sure you and Bella are either civil or absent. With that, I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. In my car, I finally allowed the tears I'd been holding back all day to fall. Not tears of regret or second thoughts, but tears of release, of letting go of the unfair burden I'd carried for too long. As I drove to my new apartment, small but mine, a place where I was neither unwelcome nor unappreciated, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it was mine to navigate as I saw fit. 2 weeks of blissful independence followed. My new apartment, though modest, felt like a palace of peace after years of walking on eggshells in my family home. I established new routines, decorated according to my taste, without consulting anyone else, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of knowing that every dollar I spent was an investment in my own life, rather than someone else's. I heard nothing from Mom or Bella during those 2 weeks, which suited me fine. I needed the space to process my anger and hurt, to remind myself that I had made the right decision in leaving. My colleagues noticed the change in me almost immediately. "You seem different, my friend," Jenna commented over lunch. "More relaxed." I smiled. "Amazing what happens when you stop carrying dead weight. So no regrets about moving out." "None," I said firmly. "I should have done it years ago." But despite my conviction, I couldn't help wondering how they were managing. Had they figured out a plan for the mortgage? Was Cassidy actually helping, or had that been a convenient excuse to get me out? I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore, but 5 years of responsibility left habits that were hard to break. On the 15th day of my new independence, the call came. I was cooking dinner. Actual cooking, not just reheating leftovers, when Mom's name flashed on my phone screen. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won out. "Hello, Azalea, it's Mom." Her voice sounded strained, almost desperate. "I know. What's up? We need to talk to you. About the house." I closed my eyes, leaning against the counter. "Mom, I told you the house is your responsibility now. I'm done. Please just hear me out. Things have gotten complicated." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop the following day, neutral territory where we could talk without the emotional baggage the house carried. When I arrived, both Mom and Bella were already there, huddled over steaming mugs with identical expressions of distress. "Thank you for coming," Mom said as I slid into the seat across from them. "Let's cut to the chase," I replied, not bothering with pleasantries. "What's going on with the house?" Mom and Bella exchanged glances before Mom spoke. "We can't make the mortgage payment this month, or realistically, any month going forward." "What happened to Cassidy? I thought she was paying rent." Bella stared at her coffee. "She moved out after a week. Said the house was too depressing with all the tension." I had to suppress a laugh. Of course, Cassidy had bailed. She had been nothing but a convenient excuse to begin with. "And you haven't found another tenant." "We've tried," Mom said defensively. "But the good room in the house was yours, and it needs painting and updating before anyone would want it. And we can't afford those improvements without my money," I finished for her. "We're not asking for a handout," Bella interjected, finally looking up. "Maybe a loan just until we get back on our feet." "A loan," I repeated flatly. "Like the $100,000 I've already put into a house that isn't mine. Was that a loan too? Should I expect repayment with interest?" "That's different," Mom said. "That was family helping family. And this wouldn't be." "What exactly has changed?" "Except that I'm no longer living in the house, being taken advantage of." The conversation deteriorated from there, with Bella accusing me of being vindictive, and Mom vacillating between guilt trips and veiled threats about what Dad would think of my behavior. I sat through it all with a strange sense of detachment, as if watching a movie I'd seen too many times to be emotionally invested in the outcome. Finally, I held up a hand to stop their increasingly desperate arguments. "I need to tell you both something. Something I discovered recently that changes everything." They fell silent, wary curiosity, replacing the desperation in their eyes. "Last month, I was organizing my financial documents when I found something interesting. A conversation with Dad's lawyer that I'd completely forgotten about." Mom shifted uncomfortably. "What are you talking about? After Dad died, his lawyer called me." There was some confusion about the house deed. Dad had apparently started paperwork to add me as a co-owner of the house, but it wasn't completed before he passed. "That's ridiculous," Mom said quickly. "Your father would have told me about something like that." "That's what I thought too, which is why I didn't pursue it at the time. I assumed it was a miscommunication." I pulled out my phone and opened my email. But then I found these emails from Dad sent a few months before he was diagnosed. I slid the phone across the table, watching as Mom's face paled while reading. The emails detailed Dad's plan to add me to the house deed in recognition of my financial responsibility and commitment to the family. He had been proud of how I managed my money and wanted to ensure I had security if anything happened to him. "He never mentioned this to me," Mom whispered, pushing the phone back. "Maybe he was waiting for the right time. Or maybe he didn't think you'd approve given how you've always favored Bella." "That's not save it, Mom." The point is, Dad wanted me to have a stake in that house. A house I've been paying for entirely on my own for 5 years. And yet, when it came time to make decisions about that house, I had no say whatsoever. Bella, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. So what are you saying? You want the house now? No, what I want is what I've always wanted: fairness, recognition of my contributions, respect for my sacrifices. We respect you, Mom said weakly. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Is that why you rushed me out the door for Bella's friend? We made a mistake. Mom admitted, tears welling in her eyes. We didn't realize how much we depended on you until you were gone. That's the problem, isn't it? You've both taken me for granted for so long that you can't function without me, yet you resent being dependent on me at the same time. They didn't deny it, which was perhaps the most honest moment we'd had as a family in years. So, what happens now? Bella asked, her earlier defensiveness replaced by genuine concern. The bank called yesterday. They're threatening foreclosure if we miss another payment. I sat back, weighing my options. I could walk away completely, let them face the consequences of their actions. It would be justified after how they'd treated me. But that would mean losing Dad's house, the last physical connection to him we had. Despite everything, I wasn't sure I was ready for that finality. I need some time to think, I said finally. This isn't a simple situation with a simple solution. We don't have much time, Mom reminded me anxiously. The payment is due in 10 days. I'm aware of how mortgages work, Mom. I've been paying one for 5 years, remember. As I prepared to leave, Bella reached across the table and grabbed my hand, the first genuine gesture she'd made toward me in longer than I could remember. Azalea, I know I haven't been fair to you. I know I've been selfish. But please don't let us lose Dad's house because of my mistakes. Her admission took me by surprise. Bella rarely acknowledged her flaws, let alone took responsibility for her actions. It wasn't enough to erase years of inequity, but it was something, a crack in the wall of entitlement she'd built around herself. I'll be in touch, I said, neither promising help nor definitively refusing it. As I left the coffee shop, my mind was already churning with possibilities. What did I want the outcome to be here? Justice for myself, punishment for them, preservation of Dad's legacy, all of the above. Wow, this situation was getting more intense by the minute. I never expected to find those emails from Dad, and I could tell from your comments that many of you could relate to being the responsible sibling who gets taken for granted. If you're enjoying this family drama so far, hit that like button to keep me motivated. Are you Team Azalea, or do you think I should forgive and help out? Let me know in the comments below. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. You won't want to miss what happens next when I reveal the plan I came up with that changed everything. After my coffee shop meeting with Mom and Bella, I spent the evening researching options. I contacted Dad's former lawyer, Robert Castellano, who remembered the conversation about adding me to the deed. Your father was very clear about his intentions, Robert explained during our phone call. He wanted to recognize your financial responsibility and ensure you had security. But the paperwork was never completed. Unfortunately not. He became ill shortly after our initial discussions, and priorities shifted to his medical care. So legally, I have no claim to the house, Robert paused thoughtfully. Not based on your father's incomplete intentions. However, given that you've been paying the mortgage for 5 years, there might be other avenues worth exploring. This sparked an idea I hadn't previously considered. The next morning, I called the bank that held the mortgage. I'd like to discuss account details for the mortgage on 742 Maple Street, I told the customer service representative. Certainly. May I have your name and the account number? Azalea Monroe. I don't have the account number, but the mortgage is in the name of Eleanor Monroe. After verifying my identity and connection to the account as the person who had been making payments for years, I was in their system. The representative pulled up the information. Miss Monroe, I see that you've been making payments on this mortgage, but you're not listed as an owner or co-borrower. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. I've been making payments on behalf of my mother for 5 years, but recent circumstances have changed our arrangement. I'm calling to understand my options. What specifically would you like to know? If the mortgage goes into default, what happens? And is there any way for me to take over the mortgage officially? The representative explained the foreclosure process and then offered information. That changed everything. As for taking over the mortgage, there is something called an assumption agreement that might be applicable in your situation. It would allow you to take over the existing mortgage without refinancing. Even though I'm not on the deed, that would need to be addressed separately. You would need to be added to the deed or have the property transferred to you to fully assume the mortgage. I recommend speaking with our mortgage services department for more detailed information. I was transferred to a mortgage specialist who provided more specifics. To assume the mortgage, I would need my mother's cooperation. She would have to agree to add me to the deed or transfer the property entirely. Given our current situation, this seemed unlikely. However, there was another option. If the mortgage went into default, I could potentially purchase the property during pre-foreclosure or at auction, though this was risky and could damage Mom's credit severely. Armed with this information, I scheduled another meeting with Mom and Bella, this time at my apartment. When they arrived, their faces showed a mixture of hope and apprehension. I've been doing some research. I began after we settled in my small living room. And I've spoken to both Dad's lawyer and the mortgage company. And Mom prompted anxiously. There are a few options. None of them simple, none of them perfect. I laid out what I had learned about assumption agreements, deed transfers, and the foreclosure process. So basically, we either sign the house over to you or lose it to the bank. Bella summarized her tone accusatory. Those aren't the only options. You could sell the house downsized to something affordable, or Mom could refinance with a longer term to lower the payments. My credit isn't good enough to refinance, Mom admitted, and I can't afford to sell and buy something else. The market is terrible right now, we'd lose money. So, what are you proposing, Azalea? Bella asked the edge, returning to her voice. I took a deep breath. I'm willing to help, but not without conditions. Mom leaned forward eagerly. Anything. We're desperate. I want the deed transferred to my name. Completely. In exchange, I'll continue making the mortgage payments and allow you both to live there. The stunned silence that followed was almost comical. Mom and Bella exchanged incredulous glances before Mom found her voice. You want us to give you the house. Your father and I paid for that house for 20 years before you stopped paying and I took over, I finished. For 5 years, Mom. 5 years where I paid $108,000 toward a house that isn't mine. A house I was kicked out of to make room for Bella's friend who stayed all of 1 week. But it's still my house, Mom protested. A house you can't afford to keep. A house that will be foreclosed on without my help. Bella crossed her arms. This feels like extortion. No, it's a business proposition. You need financial help. I'm willing to provide, but I want security in return. I'm done pouring money into an asset I have no legal claim to. And what happens to us if you own the house? Mom asked, her voice small. You can continue living there rent-free as long as you cover the utilities and basic maintenance. I won't make you leave. Until you decide to sell it out from under us, Bella muttered. I shook my head. I have no intention of selling. This is Dad's house and I want to keep it in the family. But I want recognition for my contribution. I want legal protection for my investment. And yes, I want some measure of justice for how I've been treated. The discussion went in circles for hours. Mom alternated between tearful pleas and indignant objections. Bella vacillated between accusations of cruelty and grudging acknowledgement of their limited options. But as the deadline for the mortgage payment loomed, the reality of their situation became increasingly clear. "We need time to think about this," Mom finally said. "You have 48 hours, I replied, not unkindly but firmly. "After that, I'll need time to set up the transfer if you agree, or you'll need time to find another solution if you don't." They left my apartment subdued and uncertain. I felt no triumph, only a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. This wasn't how I had imagined acquiring my first home, but perhaps it was fitting a recognition, however, belated of the role I had played in preserving our family legacy when no one else would or could. Exactly 47 hours after our meeting, my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with a calmness I didn't entirely feel. "Hello, we'll do it," Mom said without preamble, her voice tight. "We'll transfer the deed to you." Despite having proposed this solution myself, hearing Mom's agreement sent a wave of conflicting emotions through me: relief, vindication, and an unexpected pang of guilt. "Are you sure?" I asked. "This is a major decision. Do we have a choice?" The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. "It's either this or lose the house completely." "Mom, I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to protect myself while still helping our family." By taking your father's house, I took a deep breath, tamping down the flare of anger her words ignited. "I'm securing my investment, an investment I've already made for 5 years without any protection or recognition. And I'm offering you both a place to live without financial burden. Many people would consider that generous." The silence on the other end stretched until I wondered if she'd hung up. "Mom, I'm still here," she replied, her voice softer. "I know you think I've been unfair to you. Maybe I have, but this feels extreme. What would you have me do instead? Continue paying for a house that isn't mine? Walk away and let it go into foreclosure? What's your solution, Mom?" Another long pause. "There isn't one." "That's why we're agreeing to your terms. Then let's proceed without resentment, if possible. This doesn't have to destroy our relationship." She made a non-committal sound. "Bella wants to talk to you before we sign anything." "Can you meet us at the house tomorrow?" I agreed, and the following afternoon found me standing on the porch of the home I had financially supported but been evicted from. The irony wasn't lost on me as I rang the doorbell rather than using my key. Bella answered, looking more disheveled than usual. Her normally carefully styled hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore no makeup, a rarity for her. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "Mom's in the kitchen." The house already felt different, as if my 2-week absence had somehow altered its fundamental character. There were unwashed dishes in the sink mail piled on the counter and a general air of defeat that hadn't been present when I lived there. Mom sat at the kitchen table, papers spread before her. She looked up when I entered but didn't rise to greet me. "Azalea," she acknowledged with a nod. "Mom." I took a seat across from her. "You wanted to meet before finalizing everything." Bella joined us, sliding into a chair with uncharacteristic hesitance. "We've been talking, and we have some concerns about your proposal." I raised an eyebrow. "I thought you had agreed to the terms." "We've agreed to transfer the deed," Mom clarified, "but we need some assurances in writing about our continued residence here." "That seems reasonable," I conceded. "What specifically are you concerned about?" "That you'll change your mind once you legally own the house," Bella said bluntly. "That you'll decide to sell it or move back in and force us out. We need protection too." It was a fair point, one I had anticipated. "I'm happy to sign an agreement guaranteeing your right to live here rent-free for a specified period as long as you cover utilities and basic maintenance as discussed." "How long a period?" Mom asked cautiously. 5 years, I said without hesitation. "The same amount of time I paid the mortgage, without any legal protection. After that, we can renegotiate based on everyone's circumstances at that time." They exchanged glances, silently communicating in that way they had always done, excluding me from their private understanding. "And what if you decide to sell during those 5 years?" Bella pressed. "The agreement would include a clause that any sale would be contingent on honoring your residence rights for the agreed-upon period. The new owner would be bound by the same terms." "We want first right of refusal," Mom added. "If you decide to sell, we get the first opportunity to buy it back. At fair market value," I specified. "Not at a discount." Mom nodded reluctantly. "Fair market value." The negotiation continued for another hour, each of us advocating for our interests while trying to find a solution we could all live with. By the end, we had outlined the key points of an agreement. I would assume ownership of the house and responsibility for the mortgage. Mom and Bella would have guaranteed residence for 5 years without rent, but covering utilities and basic maintenance. Any major repairs would be my responsibility as the owner, and they would have first right of refusal if I decided to sell. "I'll have my lawyer draft the agreement based on these terms," I said, gathering the notes we'd made. "Once everyone approves the language, we can proceed with the deed transfer." As I stood to leave, Bella unexpectedly reached for my hand. "Azalea, I know we've had our differences, but thank you for not letting us lose the house." The gesture caught me off guard. It was perhaps the first time Bella had expressed genuine gratitude toward me in years. "It's Dad's legacy," I said simply. "I don't want to lose it either." Mom remained seated, her expression unreadable. "This isn't how I pictured things turning out." "None of us did, Mom. But we're adapting to the reality we have, not the one we wished for." As I left the house, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Satisfaction at having secured my investment relief, at finding a solution that preserved the family home, concern about the future of our strained relationships, and a lingering sadness that it had come to this. But underneath it all was a quiet certainty that I had made the right decision for myself, even if it had been painful for everyone involved. The legal process moved swiftly, driven by the urgency of the impending mortgage payment. My lawyer drafted the residence agreement, which was reviewed and signed by all parties. The deed transfer was processed through the county clerk's office, officially making me the owner of the house I had been paying for all along. When the final paperwork was completed, I held the deed in my hands, my name printed where once only my parents' names had been. It wasn't how I had imagined becoming a homeowner, but there was undeniable satisfaction in the tangible recognition of my contributions. For the first time in 5 years, my financial sacrifice had security attached to it. "Congratulations, Miss Monroe," the clerk said as she handed me the official copy of the deed. "The house is now legally yours." I thanked her and stepped outside into the bright afternoon sunlight, feeling both the weight of new responsibility and the lightness of justified vindication. The road ahead would undoubtedly hold more family complications, but I would navigate them from a position of security rather than vulnerability. For now, that was enough. 3 months passed since the deed transfer. I settled into my apartment, enjoying the independence, while continuing to pay the mortgage on the family home as agreed. Mom and Bella remained there, our interactions limited to necessary communications about the house, a repair needed, a bill question, logistical matters. The emotional distance between us remained vast and seemingly unbridgeable, until the day I received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Azalea Monroe?" a professional-sounding woman asked when I answered. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Julia Whitman from Crestview Realty. I'm calling about the property at 742 Maple Street. Your mother suggested I contact you as the owner." I froze. "My mother contacted you about the house?" "Yes, she mentioned you might be interested in listing the property." "I'd love to schedule a time to discuss your options and provide a market evaluation." My mind raced. Why would Mom tell a realtor I wanted to sell the house? We had an agreement, 5 years of guaranteed residence for them with no plans to sell on my part. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I told the realtor. I'm not interested in selling at this time. Oh, I see. She sounded confused. Your mother seemed quite certain. She said the family was ready to move on. I'll discuss it with her and get back to you if anything changes, I said firmly before ending the call. I immediately called Mom, my hands shaking with a mixture of confusion and anger. Why is a realtor calling me about selling the house, I demanded, when she answered. A long pause followed. I was going to talk to you about that. Talk to me about what... We have an agreement, Mom. The house isn't being sold. Azalea, please listen. Things have changed. What things? It's been 3 months, she sighed heavily. Bella's been offered a job in Colorado. A good job with benefits and advancement potential. It's an opportunity she can't pass up. My anger deflated slightly, replaced by confusion. That's good for her. But what does that have to do with selling the house? I'm going with her, Mom said simply. I can't stay in that house alone. The memories, the emptiness, it's too much. And Colorado is supposed to be beautiful. A fresh start would do me good. I sat down trying to process this unexpected development. You're moving to Colorado with Bella. Yes. Which means we won't need the residence rights we negotiated. I thought selling the house would be the simplest solution. You'd get your investment back plus any appreciation and be free of the mortgage responsibility. Why didn't you talk to me before contacting a realtor? I was going to, but then the realtor called sooner than expected. I'm sorry for the confusion. I wasn't sure whether to believe her, but it didn't really matter. The fact remained that both she and Bella were planning to leave, abandoning the house they had fought so hard to keep just 3 months earlier. When are you planning to move? I asked. Bella starts her new job in 6 weeks. We're hoping to be settled before then. 6 weeks. After all the drama, the negotiations, the legal paperwork, they were simply walking away with barely more than a month's notice. I need some time to think about this, I told Mom. It's a significant change to what we agreed upon. Of course, take whatever time you need. But... She hesitated. The sooner we know about the house, the easier it will be to plan our move. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence, trying to make sense of this new reality. I had fought for ownership of the house to protect my investment and secure my family's legacy. Now, Mom and Bella were voluntarily leaving, rendering much of our agreement moot. I spent the next week weighing my options. I could sell the house as Mom suggested, pocketing the proceeds, and being free of the mortgage. I could keep it as a rental property generating income while maintaining ownership. Or I could move back in myself, reclaiming the space that had been my home for most of my life. Each option had merits and drawbacks. Selling would provide immediate financial benefit but mean letting go of Dad's legacy. Renting would preserve ownership but add landlord responsibilities I wasn't sure I wanted. Moving back would mean giving up my peaceful apartment and returning to a space filled with complicated memories. I decided I needed more information before making a decision. I contacted Julia Whitman and scheduled a market evaluation, making it clear I was only exploring options at this stage. The results were surprising. The market in your neighborhood has appreciated significantly in the past few years, Julia explained during our meeting at the house. Based on comparable sales and the home's condition, I would recommend listing at $425,000. I nearly choked on my water. $425. The mortgage balance is only $230,000. She nodded, smiling. Which means you have substantial equity. The location has become highly desirable and homes in this area aren't staying on the market long. After she left, I wandered through the house, seeing it with new eyes, not as the site of family conflict, but as a valuable asset with potential beyond what I had imagined. At the current value, after paying off the mortgage, I would walk away with nearly $200,000. Money that could significantly change my financial future. Money I had earned through years of sacrifice and responsibility. But as I stood in Dad's study, now used as a storage room for Bella's excess belongings, I felt his presence acutely. This had been his dream home, the place where he had raised his family, the legacy he had wanted to pass on specifically to me, according to those emails I had discovered. The solution came to me gradually over the following days, a plan that felt both financially sound and emotionally right. I invited Mom and Bella to my apartment for dinner to discuss the future of the house. "I've decided what I want to do," I told them after we'd eaten. "I'm not going to sell." They exchanged surprised glances. "But we're moving," Bella reminded me. "You'll be stuck with a big house and mortgage on your own." "Not exactly," I explained. "I'm going to sell my apartment and move back into the house." "You want to live there again?" Mom asked, clearly surprised. "After everything, it's my house now," I said simply. "And it was Dad's house. I want to honor that connection." "But the mortgage," Bella began. I smiled. "I've run the numbers. The house has appreciated considerably. If I refinance based on the current value, I can pull out enough equity to pay off my student loans and car while actually lowering the monthly payment. It makes financial sense." "So you're keeping it," Mom said, her tone unreadable. "Yes, but that's not all." I took a deep breath. "I'm setting aside some of the equity, $50,000 for each of you." Their shocked expressions were almost comical. "Why would you do that?" Bella asked suspiciously. "Because, despite everything, we're family. Dad would have wanted us to find a way forward. This money can help you both get established in Colorado. A clean slate for everyone. After how we treated you," Mom's voice was barely above a whisper. "After we pushed you out," I met her gaze steadily. "I'm not doing this to make you feel guilty or obligated. I'm doing it because it's what I believe is right. The house is mine now, legally and morally. I paid for it, I fought for it, and now I'm choosing what to do with it. And what I choose is to help you both start over while I rebuild my life in the home that Dad wanted me to have." Tears filled Mom's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just use the money wisely and build good lives in Colorado." "I don't deserve your generosity," Bella admitted, looking genuinely humbled for perhaps the first time in her adult life. "Maybe not," I agreed candidly. "But that's the thing about family. Sometimes we get more than we deserve, good or bad." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Mom and Bella packed for their move while I prepared to sell my apartment and return to the family home. The refinancing went through smoothly, and I distributed the promised funds to them just before their departure. On their last day in the house, I came over to hand them the final paperwork and say goodbye. The moving truck was already loaded, the rooms echoing with emptiness. "So this is it," Mom said, looking around the kitchen, where we'd shared so many meals and arguments. "This is it," I agreed. "A new chapter for all of us." She hesitated, then stepped forward to embrace me, the first genuine hug we'd shared in longer than I could remember. "I'm sorry, Azalea, for not seeing your value, for not appreciating your sacrifices." I returned the hug, surprised by how right it felt. "I'm sorry, too, for the anger I held on to for so long." Bella joined our embrace, forming a circle that felt both familiar and entirely new. "We're going to do better," she promised. "All of us." After they left, I stood in the empty house, my house now in every sense, and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The journey had been painful and complicated, but the outcome was unexpectedly perfect. I had secured my financial future, preserved Dad's legacy, and somehow, against all odds, begun the process of healing our fractured family. As I walked through the rooms already, planning renovations and changes to make the space truly mine, I couldn't help but think that Dad would approve. He had wanted to add me to the deed because he recognized my responsibility and commitment to the family. Now, years later, that recognition had come full circle in a way none of us could have anticipated. The mortgage that had been such a burden for so long was now an investment in my future. The house that had been the site of so much conflict was now my sanctuary, and the family that had taken me for granted now viewed me with new respect, not because I had demanded it, but because I had proven myself worthy of it through both strength and compassion. I settled into the window seat in what would now be my primary bedroom, watching as Mom and Bella's car pulled away from the curb heading west toward their new beginning. As they disappeared around the corner, I felt the last vestiges of resentment fade, replaced by hope for all our futures. Sometimes I reflected justice comes in unexpected forms, not as revenge or punishment, but as the natural consequence of choices made and lessons learned. My sister had moved in for support, and my mom had kicked me out, leaving me with the entire mortgage. But in the end, that mortgage had become the key to my empowerment, and ironically, to our family's healing. Asterisk. What an unexpected journey this has been, from feeling betrayed and homeless to owning my father's house and helping my family start fresh. I hope my story resonates with those of you who've experienced family betrayal or felt unappreciated by those closest to you. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that ultimately led to healing in your family? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story touched you or taught you something valuable about family dynamics, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories with unexpected twists. Sharing this video might help someone else navigating complex family situations. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for joining me on this emotional roller coaster. And remember, sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making others suffer, but finding your own path to happiness and peace. Until next time, this is Azalea Monroe, wishing you strength and wisdom in your own family journeys. Asterisk.